Hi, it's Gerald, also known as Joe Remax, coming to you from my office in Bangkok, Thailand. Today, I have a subject to talk about that none of us like, but none of us can avoid: tax. So today, I'd like more specifically to talk about property transfer tax and the tax that applies when you buy or sell a property in Thailand. So today I'll mix it up a little bit because I want to show you my screen on my computer. So we'll jump over to my screen, take a look at how all the taxes work, and then we'll jump back and wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, here it comes. So let's grab a coffee, get ready, and let's get into it. So welcome to my desktop. So what we're looking at here is a little flow chart that I developed for understanding the taxes. So let's start at the top. First of all, are we transferring a property that has a deed or not? And you may ask, when does a property not have a deed? And that would be off plan, meaning you bought from the developer a contract to buy, but you have not transferred ownership to you. So that happens once in a while, and that we call off plan. When you transfer that kind of ownership, the contract to buy, there is no tax that applies. There may be a service fee from the developer. However, that kind of transaction to date is not taxed. Speaking of to date, there are proposed planned changes to the tax rates. So the taxes in the future will be applied the same as we're talking about today, but the rates may change. So always good to check with your agent or a reliable source about what the taxes are associated to any particular transaction. So now we're into a property that has a deed, so it's a resale, down the resale branch. And the first tax that we run into is the transfer tax, which is a 2% flat tax. And that tax, here we go, assessed value of the property. So regardless of what it's being sold for, they will look up the government assessed value of the property at the land department and base it on that. Typically the assessed value is below the market value. So, and as you can see on this chart, we have many taxes. And strictly speaking, according to the law, the seller is liable for all taxes, and that doesn't change. However, when you go to buy, there's usually some negotiations about shared cost. And what's very typical is that the transfer tax and stamp duty would be split between the buyer and seller equally. The withholding tax and business tax would be the responsibility of the seller, but this is all negotiable, so pay attention when you get to the purchase agreement time of your property, what exactly you've agreed to pay as a seller and as a buyer. So let's work down our little flow chart. So we have our transfer tax. Now we have withholding tax. That again is based on the assessed value of the property. What is the withholding tax? It's really the seller's income tax for the monetary gain, and the tax rate is a stepped tax rate. So on the first, let's say 1 to 500,000 is exempt. From 500,000 to $1 million is one rate, and then as you work up, it's step, step, step. So there's no flat rate that I can give you, other than it maxes out at 20. I've never seen it hit 20. It's typically around 5%, maybe less, of the property value. And if the seller happens to be a corporation, it's a fixed 1%. So if the seller is a company, if the property is held by a company, it's fixed 1%. Okay, so now we continue down our little flow chart, and we ask a question: how long has the seller owned this property? And some people are confused by this. The intent here by the government is to avoid property flipping and profiteering and falsely increasing the value of properties. So they impose what they call the business tax. And that would apply to anyone who is flipping property. So how do they identify these people? If you hold the property for less than 5 years, business tax applies with an exemption, which we'll talk about shortly. So it's not how old the property is. Some people get confused by that. It's a 20-year-old property, therefore no. If the seller bought a 20-year-old property yesterday or last year, business tax applies. So let's work down here about, we've made it through our withholding tax. We're going to how long have you owned it? If it's more than 5 years, we apply a stamp duty of 0.5%. Stamp duty is based on the selling price. Okay, so if it's more than 5 years, you're done. So we, in this case, it was 2% plus the withholding tax plus the stamp duty. What if we had it less than 5 years? Well, business tax applies, but there is a exemption for your primary residence. So if this property is your primary residence for 12 months, then you're exempt from the business tax. And how do we determine primary residency is based on, there's a system of registration in Thailand, so you can register yourself as saying, with the government saying, this is my home. And when you do that, they issue a little book and they say you're living here, and that then makes it your primary residence. The government will not allow you to register in 2 different addresses. So everybody has to be registered one address. Even as a foreigner, you can do this. There's a bit of a process you have to go through. So with the government, you have to go through, you have to register your home with them, and you have to register yourself with them, and they'll issue you a little book to say you live there. There are no further tax liabilities associated with that. Some people may be scared, saying, oh, I'm now taxable in Thailand. No, there's no tax liability as of today. So if you're clever and you buy, if you're a foreigner and you say, maybe I want to sell, or even if you're Thai, I think I may want to sell in the next few years this property, make sure that you do take this step. That just opens up a little bit more options for you, and you avoid this tax over here, which is the business tax. The business tax is applied, okay, so business tax is based again on the selling price of the property, and it's 3.3%. So here we go down the flow chart. I pay my transfer tax, I pay my withholding tax, how long have I had it? Less than 5 years. Have I registered myself? If it is, you pay the stamp duty. If you haven't, this is a business transaction, they deem it to be, and you pay a 3.3 business tax. The other question is, how do I know the assessed value of a property? Well, you know the assessed value of a property by talking to the land department or going to official website where you can input the details of the title deed, and it will tell you the tax liabilities and the assessed value. Again, you know, it's 99% accurate. You always should have a little bit of extra cash to top up if the land department at that time that you go to register has recalculates any differently than the website did. So thank you for watching. I hope this is useful and gives you a brief introduction to the subject we love to hate, taxes. Anyway, take care. Talk to you guys later. So that's the way it works for taxes. We've got 3 possible tax on any one transaction, with the stamp duty and the business tax being an either or. So on any one transaction, we're going to apply 3 taxes. There is the transfer tax based on the assessed value of the house, withholding tax based on the assessed value of the house, and there's stamp duty or business tax, either or, based on the selling value of the property. I hope that helps. Remember to make sure that when you're buying or selling that you clear up all the taxes, that you know what's going to be due when you go to register your property so it goes smoothly and efficiently. Hoping you the best. Happy house hunting.